On this episode of the Bo Templin Show, I've got some of my old friends joining me. I got Uncle Luke Domask today. I got Ben Sorenson of Fox Sports coming to join. And the three of us, we talk a little bit about The Last Dance, which may be the best episode so far. And I was a huge fan of the Rodman, Phil Jackson episodes. But this week was unbelievable. So please tune in. We're going to be on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud. I'm going to get this thing on YouTube. So, let me know what you think, what you guys want to hear next, and this is the Bo Templin Show. All right, gentlemen, we're rocking and rolling. It is Tuesday, May 5th, 4:30 here out in San Diego, California. Coming on the show today, I got Ben Sorenson. I got Uncle Luke Domask. Gentlemen, if you want to start, where are you right now in the world, and how's your week been? Uncle Luke, you can start first. We'll go to Ben after that.
I'm in Chicago, Illinois. Funny enough, Bo, I woke up to the notification this morning that, speaking of notifications,
might as well get that out of the way early, huh?
What was it? Of my flight for Southwest to San Diego was supposed to be today at 9 a.m. So unfortunate that I can't be in San Diego. I'd be in your presence right now, actually. If it was normal times, but nope, still stuck in Chicago. But this, I guess, is the next best thing. Talking some Last Dance with you.
That's pretty heartbreaking to hear, honestly. Like that is. Just...
I didn't want to open it up with bad news, but I know.
Well, and it wasn't. And actually, it wasn't even just going to be you. We had Jack Mays coming out this week, and then Austin Keeler, who's in San Diego now, but would have been in San Francisco and would have came down to visit this weekend. It was gonna be a pretty good week we had lined up, but it'll happen sooner rather than later. I have no doubt about it. Ben Sorenson, where you at, my friend? How we doing, champ?
I'm doing well. I am live from Los Angeles, California. A lot of sunshine outside, but staying inside. Another week, no sports. Just twiddling my thumbs, itching to get back out, back to work. Honestly,
you're preaching to the choir here, gentlemen. The good news here is that we got some fun stuff to talk about today. The last 3-4 weeks, The Last Dance has provided an incredible amount of relief to my week. It gives me something to be excited about. It's something that, Sunday rolls around, we're locked in for 2 hours. There's no moving from the couch. There's nothing else to it. You're locked in for those 2 hours. Couple things that I did notice this week that we'll get into here in a little bit, but overall, what's your reaction from the episodes here of The Last Dance? I know, Uncle Luke, you said that this might have been your favorite week so far of the documentary.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's a whole lot going on. First of all, the opening, I know both of you would appreciate it. I alluded to it on Twitter a little bit, but the opening to the fifth episode where Madison Square Garden, like aerial shot, you got Nas and Lauryn Hill in the background, then you have that footage of the behind the scene footage of the 98 All-Star game. I mean, you never see that, right? And I think whenever the All-Star game comes around, that's like something I always want to see. I want to see these guys who are, going head to head all season. Some of these guys are seeing each other 4 times a year, playing against each other 4 times a year. And to see them kind of loosen up a little bit, hang out in the locker room before the game. Obviously, you had Jordan, Magic, and Bird who kind of ruled that era. So to see like those old heads, and then you had the younger guys, obviously Kobe, the Kobe dynamic in general is just really cool to see. Unfortunately, after the fact, I think when they did his interview, I think a lot of people were kind of itching for a little bit more Kobe in it. Maybe we'll see it a little bit later on. But I think when they were doing the documentary, they were expecting Kobe to be around to kind of elaborate on what he spoke about. And there's no doubt Kobe would be on some podcast right now or some show talking more about the Last Dance and that in general. But I think I'll hand it off to you, Ben. But I think my overall reaction was I loved these 4 years in the Bulls championship run, like going into them, how it started, and then obviously sustaining that success, and then what led up to his retirement. I thought it was really fun. There's the best behind the scenes footage, I think, so far, without a doubt.
Ben Sorenson, overall reaction from this week?
That behind the scenes stuff is like the stuff I live for, and Kobe, a year and a half in the league, like already got the Eastern All-Stars talking about that little Laker boy. I mean, Jordan liked it. I mean, I think he was kind of talking shit, but he was like ready for it. He wanted it. So I mean, first reaction watching this doc is just Mike is just next level athlete. I mean, like, I think the league is so stacked now with like guys like LeBron and Kawhi, and like we take these dudes for granted. But I mean, Mike jumps and everyone else falls to the ground because they're human, and then he hangs and then hits a shot in your face and then lets you hear about it. So I mean, to me, as someone, we didn't watch it, to now see it live, and like, and there's something to be said about, I want to beat you all the time. You know, LeBron is so calculated and he thinks about these big business and movie decisions, yada, yada. But there's something to be said for, I am better than you and I'm going to prove it over and over.
You know, one of the things I think Jordan highlighted throughout it, but, you know, they were talking about the PR machine that was behind Michael Jordan, right? They talked about the Gatorade stuff. They talked about the Nike line, Adidas fucking up just catastrophically with that deal. And ultimately, Michael Jordan's mom being the one to encourage him to go to this Nike meeting. But at the end of the day, he said, all the work that I put in with the PR and the commercial success, it stemmed from his play on the court. There was nowhere else. It started and ended right there. If he's losing games, if he doesn't win the rings, none of that stuff really works anyways. Uncle Luke, I think we have to get into it, and I know Ben Sorenson's going to appreciate this just as much as us. The music this week was just fucking unbelievable, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want go ahead? You had a great tweet talking about Lauryn Hill, so I'll let you open up with that little segue in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, absolutely. Jason, do you know how to pronounce his last name? Jason Hare.
Higher. I wasn't exactly sure.
Yeah. Regardless, the director of The Last Dance was on the Dan Patrick Show, and he really goes in depth just behind the scenes of putting it all together. Obviously, you know, they're actually not done with episode 10 yet. They're like they moved up the schedule to accommodate everybody in quarantine, but also just the fact that like these are like 500 hours worth of behind the scene footage, right? So like they have to move these massive files around through online. They can't do it locally, which means obviously much quicker. But the music, I had a funny story. You know, they asked Mike like, what was your favorite music to listen to before games, just to kind of get like into his, headphones, so to speak, before games. And Mike liked like slow R&B type stuff, which is what I mean. Like, I like that too. Like, you'd listen to that before games. It wasn't listening to LL Cool J, like I'm bad before games. The man was listening to like some very slow, R&B type hip hop stuff. So they basically had to rework that. So Jason basically put his touches of his favorite music in the 90s on. And I think it's phenomenal. You got Lauryn Hill and Nas. You had, what else? You had Criss Cross. You had,
Rosa Parks by Outkast.
Yeah.
It stood out
too.
to me.
Yeah.
Like in the middle of the documentary, I look over to my pops. I'm like, I was telling him, a good friend of mine, Tyler Hagen, this is one of his favorite songs of all time. This is one of my favorite 90s songs ever. I think a lot of people forget that despite Jordan being the face of the 90s, he's not a 90s or 80s baby, right? Like, my brother's born in 82. He's a huge 90s music fan. That's not the case for guys born prior to 80. Ben Sorenson in the production room, when you hear that it's not done yet, right? When you hear that episodes 9 and 10 are still being worked on, how much anxiety are you feeling when you just hear those words?
That's like terrifying. Especially a doc of this magnitude. You got this many eyes on you. And I'm guessing interviews and everything's done, but it's like, I was listening to somebody talking about doing remote edits. And that's what we're resigned to too, is we have editors scattered throughout Los Angeles, just at their homes, and it's hard drives and literally putting a mask on and driving over to someone's house and dropping stuff off. And, but to have this many eyes on you with nothing else going on and a deadline, that's terrifine. But from the music end, not only are they just hitting bangers, but it's tying cultural moments, their ability to tie cultural moments and like snapshots in, this is 1992, like Madison Square Garden, New York, Nas, like, come on, man. They really have mastered it. And as someone who uses that style and wants to tie songs in that way, it's really impressive. And it's fun that the whole world gets to really appreciate, like, that's sports TV right there. Good sports TV.
Yeah, they were on the money the whole week. And even when they played Outkast song, it's when Jordan's showing up in Atlanta, right? Like to take on the Hawks. Everything is perfect so far. Yeah, it's brilliant. we got a little bit of insight into the 92 Dream Team. And that was the first time they'd probably hinted at it at all in the documentary. We know a lot about the Dream Team. There's been previous documentaries done. NBA TV's got a great one.
Michael Jordan called Clyde out and went at him. Tell him, this is what I'm going to do to you. Fall away jumper, good. What did I tell you? So I said, no, Clyde, you better get him back. You better get him back. Charles Barkley said, I want to take Karl Malone now. So Charles gets it, fall away jumper, good. I said, Carl, you got to get him back. You better go down there and get him back. Carl went right at him, jump shot. You ain't nothing, Barkley. So then I came down.
His energy is real high. He feels like he's in an opportunity to prove himself.
And I like Magic Johnson's rendition of retelling the practice that they showed on this week. But I think the overall most glaring part of the 92 Dream Team was leaving off Isaiah Thomas. Uncle Luke, yes or no, Michael Jordan asked for him to not be on the team.
I mean, I would assume that he wouldn't. And to be honest with you, I'm such a Jordan stan anyway, growing up in Chicago, we're right after the 90s. But, it would have messed with that chemistry. They obviously talk so much about the camaraderie, and obviously you see it behind the scenes, how much of a good time they were having. There's no doubt that I think, I don't think 9 or 8 guys, whatever it was, purportedly said that they kind of had a gripe with Isaiah being on the team. Whether it was just Mike and Isaiah or a couple other guys, there's no doubt it would have created some friction on the team. And this team would not have operated as well and as dominant as they were without that sort of just subtle calmness and hey, we're all here to get a good time. These are the best 10 basketball players on the planet, or 12 basketball players on the planet, or 11, including Leitner. But there's no doubt Isaiah deserved to be on that team without a doubt. But Michael Jordan's the face of the Dream Team. He's the face of basketball, from a global sense too. If Mike says, hey, this guy, him and I go at it back and forth, and there's obviously some disrespect there. This is 92. I'm sure they have admiration. Obviously they do have respect and admiration for each other's game now. But, Mike owns the city that Isaiah grew up in and owned high school basketball. Isaiah to this day still might be the best high school basketball player in Chicago ever. And we're talking about Rose, we're talking about Jabari Parker, who won 4 state titles in a row. And Isaiah still might wipe them all out. From any old head you talk about who knew high school basketball at that point, Isaiah owned it. And so, obviously there's a friction there, and it is what it is. Isaiah will never get over it, and I'm sure he'll never get over Mike being the one who probably instigated him not being on that team. But at the same time, Chuck Daly was the coach and coached Isaiah, right? Chuck could have been hey, Isaiah's on this team because he's one of the best 12 best basketball players alive right now. He's going to be on this team. But they didn't. They appeased Michael, and I can see it from both angles. But you got to appease the face of basketball at the time. That's my overall take on that.
Ben Sorensen, what's the big takeaway from the retelling of the 92 Dream Team story?
I mean, I could listen to that Monte Carlo practice story.
Yeah.
Talk about I want to be on a fly on the wall of any practice at any time. Probably that one. I mean, it's an all-star game. First of all, it's the Olympic team. It's probably the best team of the 90s, in any iteration, unless Kobe Bryant was somehow on it. And I mean, talk about alpha dogs fighting for their team. And I mean, Magic's the guy. And I just think he gets disrespected in the big scheme, and we dismiss a lot of what he did. And I also respect I don't want to let go of my title. And also Mike again, I'm next level, just reminding everybody, the 10 best dudes in the world, hey, y'all are good, but this is my gym, and don't forget.
Yeah.
We brought up Christian Leitner, right? And Ben, you gave a little funny look on your face when Uncle Luke said it. So do you guys know who the alternative would have been if it wasn't Leitner?
Well, didn't they want a college guy? I mean, I just
so who was drafted right around that time?
92. So that's Fab 5 era. But it's not a Fab 5 player.
It's not Fab 5.
Is it Grant Hill?
Okay, and I guess I would have to do more research on it. There were rumors that Shaq is the other name.
Oh, LSU
Wow,
Shaq
okay.
would be so tough.
Yeah, I mean, but like, you need a wing though. There's no room for Shaq. You got Malone, Barkley, the bigs, David
I'll take
Robinson, or
Shaq
whatever.
over all those guys.
I know I would too, but like, I mean,
It's
young
not like
Shaq too.
It's not like Leitner though was playing this wing position at an incredibly elite level compared to the other cats on the team. Like,
I mean,
they
he
were
was the
taking
best
care of
college basketball player at the time. There's no doubt about it. Like
Okay.
Christian Leitner on Duke in 1992 was the best college basketball player, bar none. Like,
Fair enough. Uncle
Yeah.
Luke, do you remember like growing up with the Bulls and watching the team? Do you remember not necessarily the disdain for Tony Kukoc, but do you remember like the aftermath of, do you guys remember that time when Jordan, Kukoc, and Pippen kind of went at it a little bit in the Olympics?
yeah, no, I mean, like, I'm gonna be honest with you, like, Tony Kukoc is beloved in this town, like, without a doubt. I mean, he played a significant role in those later years when, Jordan, maybe lost a step fit, like, athletically, but he still was, the best player in the world. But Scotty, like, 97, 98, Scotty started, those battles with Detroit and Boston and the Knicks, like, they took it, like, Scotty probably took as much of a beating as Michael, did. Maybe even a little bit more because, Scotty was playing the best playing the best offensive player as the best defender on the team. So, I mean, I don't remember any sort of disdain for Tony Kukoc, but I thought it was super interesting how, like, there was absolutely no, like, it's like, hey man, no disrespect to you, Tony, but we hate you because Jerry Krause is in love with you. And like, I find this like this whole, like, we got to find some sort of goat or scapegoat here, and it might as well be Jerry Krause. I'm so indifferent on it. Like, look, I've hated Bulls management until 3 weeks ago for my entire life, and Jerry Krause handed it off to Gar Forman, so like there was a passing of the asshole baton, if you will. But I, like, at the same time, like, Jerry Krause is picking these guys out in the second round. Scottie Pippen was from Central Arkansas. Like, I kind of wish they gave him just a tiny bit of credit that he picked these guys out of nowhere. Like, he was the best GM in the league at the time, but at the same time, like, he's the reason why this all broke up in the first place. But I think Tony, is beloved in this town regardless. But I find it super interesting that there was that disdain before he even showed up.
Ben Sorensen. I had two quotes that stood out to me in this episode. I want you to pick your favorite. All right. You had the brief moment where Dennis Rodman talked about going to Hooters to Phil Jackson, saying he wanted to go see some tits and ass. The level of honesty that goes on in a Phil Jackson locker room is so remarkable. I've never seen anything like it. Like, I just remember back in the day, whether it was high school, any level of ball, there was always this like somewhat level of secrecy between you and the coach that you were going to be doing some nonsense while he wasn't there. And yet this team is completely open to their head coach, their boss, about what they're going to be doing in their free time. And even Michael pointed out, saying, that's the good thing about Phil. He knows that we need our breaks. The other quote that stood out to me is when Seinfeld visited the locker room and he said, "This play's not going to work today." So, Ben Sorensen, go ahead, pick your poison. What's the better quote?
It has to be the Seinfeld. I mean, especially in the 90s at that time. Is that from the 99 season? Is that like, was
98? Yeah.
Is it 98? Okay. So like both of them are probably like peak stardom. Jerry Seinfeld has to be the most popular movie or television star on the planet at that point. And Michael Jordan's Michael Jordan. So it's like both of them shooting the shit. Like, Michael also looked relieved to see Jerry because I feel like Jerry also kind of understands that level of fame. But the audacity of Jerry to just walk into a Bulls locker room and just, "Hey, Phil, like, that's not going to work." That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah, give me that. I mean, I respect Rodman and I love Phil and the honesty of just, you maximize your guys. And, some guys, in order to get maximized, got to go to Hooters,
I guess the last thing we'll wrap up on is I got like kind of three different things here, but I want to talk about Barkley, how much of a savage he was when he was playing. And honestly, probably kids our age don't quite understand how good he actually was. I want to get into Ahmad Rashad, the reporter that got to just be on Jordan's hip the entirety of that season. Rashad is obviously a former NFLer, so I think there was this level of trust that Jordan had to him, saying, at least like he understands a little bit about what I'm going through as a player. And then we have to talk about the golfing and the gambling a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's more or less than what I expected going into the episode, but they talked about the gambling, and I wasn't sure that was going to be a guarantee at all. Ben, are you surprised by how much they showed, or are you still kind of itching for more when it comes to Jordan's off the court troubles?
I mean, like, that's what that's the point of these docs, I feel like, is these off the court issues. And for him to do that interview with the shades on, first of all, it's iconic. Like, the look, everything. The fact that he grabbed the camera guy and was like, yo, we're going to do this. But if he did that today, it's like, you definitely have a gambling problem. You just denied it in the way of just, no, I can quit anytime. I'm just, like, competitive. It's not like my wife left me. Like, so, I mean, I love it, though. But, like, obviously the most competitive guy wants to compete. Like, you hear these stories of other athletes, like Drew Brees, making up dumb games to play because he's going to beat you playing basketball. He needs some other fix to. And so, I mean, if he needs to lose 57 large at golf, like, that's what it takes.
You can handle it. You can financially handle it.
Uncle Luke, you want to take away, give 2 minutes here on, what you thought of the gambling background?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I've heard those stories a bunch of times. I think the gambling stuff is probably the one thing that I knew the most about, was like, just because, growing up in Chicago, you have so many people who have just so many stories about it. I thought the quarters stuff with the security guards, like, that is like the minimum. That's like Great Depression type gambling. Okay. Like, they don't have dice or anything. Let's just toss quarters at a wall. Right. But I guess I always thought it enhanced his legacy. Like, the fact that the man could play, and that interview you're talking about, Ben, that's right before Game 3 in Chicago. They're down 2-0 to the Knicks in the 93 conference finals, right? That's not like a Saturday day matinee game where he's going to, I'm going to break my media silence. He's doing that right before the most important game of the year, where it's a must-win game against the biggest foe at the time. I mean, just the behind the scenes stuff, like I mentioned earlier, is great because it's the most I think we've gotten so far of, like, not the 98 season, but more like the 93 stuff. Scotty and Harper, after a game, they're cracking out cigars and Miller Lights after a game. Like, we gotta, like, it really drove home how much of a toll these games and the stardom and all of this that came with being the 90s Bulls took a toll on them. They just needed to get away. They needed some sort of escape. And obviously for Michael, that was going to Atlantic City with his dad till 5 a.m. right? And the fact that he could play 36 holes of golf, take a 30-minute nap, and then tie him up and play against, the Jazz or the Knicks in the most important games of the year. For me, it just enhances his legacy. Like, it's not my money. He obviously has so much of it that it, like, if you want to call it a problem, sure, but it's only a problem if it's interfering with your work. And with Michael Jordan, it never interfered with his work. So
I love that. Oh my God. I think you could run for mayor of Chicago on that little speech you just had there, Uncle Luke. That was pretty remarkable, my friend. I would love to talk a little bit about Barkley. Obviously in, like, the last 2 years, the comparison, and there's no comparison to Draymond Green, but Draymond Green has brought the comparison on himself. Yeah. The difference is, I think it's Zion Williamson's freak athleticism combined with Draymond Green's motor. So it's the best of both worlds with both those guys. Ben, what's the most impressive part of Charles Barkley's game from what you saw?
I mean, a 6'5" power forward tearing up, like, the quote, like, the big 90s, and talk about, I'd love to see that guy play today. He'd be the perfect small 5, and, like, he could just run and just seeing, and that's another guy that, we see Fat Chuck sitting on the TNT desk, and, like, he's hilarious and he's part of the family, but you see him running, like, big men aren't supposed to move like that quick and jump that high. So, I mean, that's the thing that stands out in the 90s. And he won an MVP in an era that Michael Jordan was at the peak of his powers, and, sometimes there's flukes, but still, like, come on, you got to respect the man a little bit. Draymond Green, like, you got the rings, but you're never the best player on your team. That's just the fact.
Uncle Luke, is that Suns team the best team they played in their 6 rings?
See, that's a good question. So you have the Lakers in '91, which had a young Vlade Divac, which I think a lot of people forget how good Vlade Divac was, especially when he was younger. Obviously, got traded for Kobe, and like that's kind of what a lot of people remember him as, and obviously with the Kings. But that Lakers team was kind of towards the end of its run, so I don't think so. That Blazer team with Clyde was really good. That no one like really saw because it's out in Portland and it's a different era where you don't have league pass and you get to see these guys every night. That Portland team was pretty loaded, and Clyde was right up there as one of the best, 5 best players in the league at the time. But I think that was the best series that, like, if you want to point to like Michael Jordan's greatness, it's that series because that's '93, that's the third ring. Not many, outside of the Celtics and Lakers of the '60s and I think the Lakers in the '50s maybe. There hadn't been a three-peat since then. So, like, that's towards the end of your run. You're burnt out. And Michael goes out and averages, like, 40 plus or whatever, and like 5 rebounds and 6 assists and shoots 50% from the field and just totally just dominates that series. And by the way, he's playing golf out there, in between games, right? Like, he is so completely bored with his competition. And to bring up your point about Charles, like I think people forget about Charles and Clyde and don't give these guys the respect they do because they just weren't as good as Michael Jordan. These guys are Hall of Famers, right? These are the best of the best, the cream of the crop of the 90s that a lot of people and a lot of guys who watch basketball in the 90s think is the golden era of basketball. And there's a case to be made because these guys were that good. And I mean, Barkley today would just be out of control. He could handle it. He had a step back jumper that was, I think back then wasn't as utilized as much as it would be today, obviously with all the guys that do these step backs. But his game was good then. It would have been good now. It would have been good in the 30s, if we played NBA basketball in the 30s. He was just that good of a player. And Mike just blew him out of the water. And I think their legacies kind of get diminished in that respect because they couldn't just get over the hump on Michael.
All right, gentlemen, we have 2 more episodes in the show? Or 4 more?
4 more. We have 2 more weeks of it.
Okay, so 4 more episodes, 2 more weeks. You each get to pick one thing that is included in the next 4 episodes in the next 2 weeks. Start writing your Christmas list. Ben Sorenson, what's at the top of that Christmas list for what you get to see in the remainder of the episodes?
I mean, it's like we got to see him antagonize teammates, right? I mean, they've been kind of teasing this Steve Kerr thing, but there's more than that. I'm trying to see. We've seen degenerate gambler Michael. We've seen like America's Sweetheart commercial Michael, but I want to see like talking shit about someone's family at practice Michael to make him stronger for some playoff series that's down the road. So, and then the payoff of it's like someone becomes like whoever they need to become because Mike just tortured them at practice. So.
Maybe it's Steve Kerr hitting that big shot at the top of the key. Like whatever it may be, I'm with you on that. Uncle Luke, what's on the wish list, my friend?
Well, for me, I would say I'm really interested in that 96 season. The 72-10 team is coming, and I think it's the greater picture of Mike comes back. I'm so ready for the I'm back facts story. Like why he decided just to send. I mean, obviously that's the form of communication back then is faxing, news to people. But just the quick "I'm back" facts, and then everything that comes out. Like the fact he had to reinvent himself. He had been playing a different sport for the better part of 2 years. He had taken time off. I'm interested to see why he stepped away. I think a lot of people are going to finally get the full-on story of why he stepped away from the game. We'll get to hear Stern talk about it and whether you think it was because of the gambling. I'm sure there was some sort of conversation about hey, Mike, chill out with the gambling, which at the time, if that happens in 2020, people would just be like, yeah, he's a gambler. So am I, right? I don't think gambling is bad as, back then it may have been. But I'm just super excited for the 72-10 team. The Magic, this to get the background of the Magic. I think we're going to get a little Shaq and Penny action because they beat the Bulls in the 95 playoffs right as Michael comes back. And then to reinvent themselves, they get Rodman, and then they go on the second three-peat. The second three-peat is what I've always, that's what I grew up listening to, was how good the second three-peat was. The 72 wins, the 2 series against the Jazz, and obviously a culmination of leading up to that 98 playoffs, which this documentary is kind of, closing the ends a little bit. So I'm super excited about that.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time. Uncle Luke, thanks for stopping by, joining us on this. I hadn't been able to talk to you about The Last Dance yet on air. So it was important that we were able to squeeze this in. I'm glad we were able to make it happen.
Hey, I appreciate it, man. My tone and my excitement for Bulls basketball has just rapidly changed in this quarantine, right? It's just totally different energy levels now. So I'm excited to come on here.
Beautiful. Thank you, brother. All right, we'll
No
take
problem.
care. And Ben, we got some work to do still, my friend. Perfect. See you, Uncle Luke.